Hi there, welcome to Fantasy Hub. I'm Mia, your storyteller. Today's story is filled with heartache, discovery, and a twist you won't see coming. So let's begin.
Let me tell you about the day my perfectly ordered life fell apart and how falling apart turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. You know that moment when you're standing in your bathroom mirror at 6 in the morning, adjusting your blazer for the third time, practicing your professional smile, telling yourself today will be different? That today you'll finally close the Henderson property that's been sitting on the market for 8 months? That was me 2 years ago. Lisa Collins, top realtor at Premium Properties, Mobile, Alabama. 28 years old and absolutely convinced that success meant following every rule, dotting every I, crossing every T. I had my whole life mapped out like one of those pristine floor plans I showed clients. Graduate summa cum laude check. Real estate license by 23 check. Six-figure income by 27 check. The respect of my colleagues, a spotless reputation, and a 5-year plan that would have me opening my own firm by 30. Everything was going exactly according to plan, until she walked into my open house on Magnolia Street. It was a Sunday afternoon in October, one of those perfect southern days when the humidity finally breaks and you can actually breathe. I was standing in the foyer of this gorgeous Victorian, straightening the fresh orchids I'd placed on the console table, when I heard heels clicking across the hardwood behind me. "Excuse me, are you the listing agent?" I turned around, and I swear to you, the words died in my throat. She was stunning, not in that polished real estate client way I was used to, but in a way that made my chest tight and my palms sweaty. Tall, with wild curly hair that looked like she'd run her fingers through it, wearing dark jeans and a leather jacket that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. But it was her eyes that got me. Green, intense, like she could see right through all my carefully constructed professionalism. Yes, I'm Lisa Collins, I managed, extending my hand with what I hoped was my most confident smile. She took it, and her grip was firm, warm. "Eva Adams, I'm looking for something with character. Something with character." If I'd known then that she wasn't just talking about real estate, maybe I would have run, but I didn't. Instead, I launched into my practice tour, pointing out crown molding and original fixtures, trying to ignore the way she kept looking at me instead of the house. "The master suite has been completely renovated," I said, leading her upstairs, acutely aware of her presence behind me. Original heart pine floors throughout, but with modern amenities. She barely glanced at the bathroom. "What about you?" "I'm sorry." Do you have character, Lisa Collins?" I felt heat rise in my cheeks. In 7 years of real estate, no client had ever asked me anything remotely personal. I had my boundaries, my professional distance. Keep it about the property, always. About the property, I think my clients would say I'm thorough, dedicated. She smiled then, slow and knowing. "That's not what I asked." The smart thing would have been to redirect the conversation back to square footage and property taxes. The smart thing would have been to maintain that professional boundary I'd spent years perfecting. Instead, I heard myself saying, "I suppose. You'd have to get to know me to find out." The words hung in the air between us, and I immediately wanted to take them back. What was I doing? This wasn't like me. I didn't flirt with clients. I didn't blur professional lines. But something about Eva made me feel reckless, like I was balancing on the edge of a cliff and half wanting to jump. She took a step closer. "Is that an invitation?" My mouth went dry. We should look at the rest of the house. But as I led her through the remaining rooms, pointing out architectural details and recent updates, I could feel something shifting between us. The air seemed charged, electric. When she asked a question about the kitchen island, she stood close enough that I could smell her perfume, something exotic and intoxicating. When I reached across her to open a cabinet, my arm brushed against hers, and I felt that contact like a shock. By the time we made it back to the foyer, my carefully rehearsed sales pitch had completely abandoned me. I was fumbling with my business cards, dropping half of them on the floor when she crouched down to help me gather them up. Our hands touched, reaching for the same card, and she didn't pull away. Neither did I. "Lisa," she said quietly, and my name sounded different in her voice, intimate somehow. I looked up to find her face inches from mine, those green eyes searching mine with an intensity that made my heart race. I started to say, but I had no idea how to finish. That sentence. Should what? Should maintain my professionalism? Should step away? Should stop thinking about what it would feel like if she kissed me right here in this Victorian foyer with the afternoon sun streaming through the stained glass windows? She stood slowly, and I followed, still clutching her business card in my hand. "I'd like to see more properties," she said, her voice perfectly casual, as if the last few minutes hadn't happened. I blinked, trying to shift back into real estate agent mode. "Of course. What specifically are you looking for?" That smile again. I'll know it when I see it. She left me her number written in elegant script on the back of one of my scattered business cards and walked out, leaving me standing in that foyer, wondering what the hell had just happened to my carefully ordered world. I called her 2 days later. Professional duty, I told myself. Following up with a potential client was standard procedure. The fact that I'd been thinking about her green eyes and that slow smile had nothing to do with it. "Eva, this is Lisa Collins from the Magnolia Street property. I was wondering when you'd call." There was something in her voice, a warmth that made my stomach flutter. "I have a few properties I think might interest you. There's a beautiful loft downtown, industrial conversion with original brick walls, and when can we see it? When would work for you? Now?" I glanced at my calendar, full of carefully scheduled appointments and color-coded time blocks. I could meet you there in an hour. Perfect. Text me the address." I spent the entire drive to the loft telling myself this was just business, professional follow-up, standard client service. The butterflies in my stomach were just nervous energy about potentially closing a sale. But when I arrived at the building and saw her leaning against a vintage motorcycle, helmet tucked under one arm, hair mussed from the ride, all my self-talk crumbled. She was wearing jeans and a simple white t-shirt that somehow looked more elegant than any designer dress I'd ever seen. When she saw me, her face lit up with genuine pleasure, not the polite interest of a client. "Nice bike," I said, because it was the only coherent thought in my head. "Want to go for a ride sometime?" The question was casual but loaded with possibility. I'd never been on a motorcycle in my life. It was dangerous, impractical, completely outside my comfort zone, maybe I heard myself say. The loft was perfect for her. I could tell the moment we walked in. Exposed brick walls, soaring ceilings, huge windows that flooded the space with natural light. It was raw, artistic, full of character, everything my perfectly furnished apartment wasn't. "The original hardwood is from 1920, I said, falling back on familiar talking points as we walk through the space. All the mechanicals have been updated, but they preserved the historical elements. I don't care about the floors." She said it quietly, but something in her tone made me turn around. She was standing closer than I'd realized, close enough that I could see gold flecks in her green eyes. "Eva, she kissed me. Right there in the middle of the empty loft, with dust motes dancing in the afternoon sunlight and my clipboard still clutched in my hand. Kissed me like she'd been thinking about it for days, like it was the most natural thing in the world. And I kissed her back. I dropped the clipboard, heard it clatter against the hardwood floor, and kissed her back. Like my life depended on it. She tasted like coffee and mint and possibility, and when she slipped her hands into my hair, carefully messing up my professional chignon, I thought I might dissolve right there on the spot. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, she rested her forehead against mine. "I've been wanting to do that since Sunday," she whispered. Ava ... I started, but I didn't know what I was going to say. That this was inappropriate, that I didn't kiss clients, that I'd been thinking about it too. "Have dinner with me tonight?" It wasn't really a question, and despite every professional instinct screaming at me to say no, to maintain boundaries, to protect my reputation, I found myself nodding. "Okay," she smiled, the kind of smile that made me feel like I was the only person in the world. "I'll pick you up at 8. Where's something you can move in?" Before I could ask what that meant, she was walking toward the door, leaving me standing in the middle of the loft with kiss-swollen lips and absolutely no idea what I'd just gotten myself into. That night, she took me to a salsa club downtown. I'd never been dancing, not real dancing, not the kind where bodies moved together like they were speaking a language I didn't understand. But Eva was patient, her hands guiding my hips, teaching me the rhythm, whispering instructions in my ear that made my skin burn. "Relax," she murmured, her breath warm against my neck. "Stop thinking so much. Stop thinking." As if it were that simple. But somehow, with her arms around me and the music pulsing through my body, my analytical mind went quiet for the first time in years. There was only the beat, her touch, the way she looked at me like I was something precious and rare. We closed down the club, stayed until the lights came up, and they started stacking chairs on tables. And then she walked me to my car, her hand warm in mine, and kissed me goodnight under a streetlight like we were starring in our own romantic movie. "I want to see you again," she said, her thumb tracing along my jaw. "Ava, I should tell you, I've never ... with a woman. I mean ... double quotes," she smiled softly. "I know, we'll go slow." But slow wasn't in Ava's vocabulary, and it turned out it wasn't in mine either. Over the next few weeks, she opened my world in ways I'd never imagined. She showed me hidden speakeasies in the French Quarter, took me to poetry readings and coffee. Shops I'd never noticed, introduced me to a side of mobile I'd never known existed despite living here my entire life. And somewhere between stolen kisses and empty properties and late-night conversations on her loft's fire escape, I fell completely, irrevocably in love. We were careful at first, or I thought we were. Professional during business hours, personal. After 5, I showed her 3 more properties, all of which she found some reason to reject, before finally admitting to myself that she wasn't really looking for real estate. "You know, you could just ask me out without pretending to be a client," I said one evening as we walked through a condo in the Oakley district. She grinned, unrepentant. "Where's the fun in that? Besides, I like watching you in full agent mode." Very sexy, all those statistics and selling points. Heat flooded my cheeks. Even after weeks of this, compliments from her still caught me off. "Guard, you're terrible. Terribly into you, yes." It was cheesy and sweet and made my heart skip in that ridiculous way that should have embarrassed me, but didn't. Not with her. Nothing felt embarrassing with Eva. She had a way of making me feel beautiful, desired, like my awkwardness was charming rather than something to be hidden. The first night I stayed over at her loft, I was nervous as a teenager. I'd been with men before, nice, appropriate men my mother approved of, men who fit into my 5-year plan, but this felt entirely different. More intimate somehow, more real. Eva must have sensed my nerves because she didn't push, just held me while we watched. Old movies on her couch, her fingers playing with my hair until I relaxed against her. "Better?" she murmured. I nodded, not trusting my voice. "We don't have to do anything you don't want to do, ever." but I did want to. That was the problem, or maybe it wasn't a problem at all. I wanted her with an intensity that scared me, wanted to know what her skin felt like under my hands, wanted to hear my name on her lips when she came undone. When she finally carried me to her bed, she made love to me with a tenderness I'd never experienced before. Slow and patient and reverent, like she was memorizing every inch of my body, every sound I made, every way I responded to her touch. Afterward, lying in her arms with morning light filtering through the huge loft windows, I felt different, changed, like I'd been living my life in black and white and suddenly discovered color. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, her voice soft in the quiet. "This, you, how I didn't know I could feel like this." She pressed a kiss to my shoulder. "How do you feel?" I considered the question, really considered it. Alive. For the first time in my life, really alive. We might have kept our secret longer if it weren't for Jennifer James. Jennifer and I had a history. We'd started at Premium Properties the same year, and there'd always been an unspoken competition between us. She was everything I'd been trying to be: polished, aggressive, ruthlessly ambitious. She also had connections I didn't, family money and social standing that opened doors I had to work twice as hard to crack. I should have been more careful. Should have realized that my suddenly glowing complexion and the way I'd started smiling at my phone during meetings wouldn't go unnoticed. Should have known that Jennifer was the type to investigate when she sensed weakness. But I was drunk on love, floating through my days in a haze of contentment I'd never experienced before. Eva had that effect on me. She made me careless, reckless, willing to take risks I'd never have considered before. The day everything changed started like any other. Eva had called that morning, her voice still rough with sleep, asking if I wanted to meet for lunch. "I can't," I'd said, though I wanted to. "I'm showing the Morrison house at 1, then I have a closing at 3. What about after?" "After, yes, always after." Her laugh was warm honey in my ear. "I'll pick you up at your office. We can grab dinner, then I'll show you this amazing little jazz club I found." The Morrison house showing went well, a young couple, clearly smitten with the property's period details and established garden. I was feeling confident, optimistic about potentially closing another sale when I decided to drive by the riverside. Property Eva and I had looked at the week before. She'd loved it, but said she needed to think about it, code for spending another evening in my arms while I tried to convince her that buying real estate wasn't actually why we were there. I parked across the street, intending to just check if the for sale sign was still up, when I saw another car in the driveway, Jennifer's silver BMW. My stomach dropped. There was no reason for Jennifer to be at one of my listings unless she was poaching clients, something she'd done before, but never this blatantly. I was debating whether to confront her when I saw movement in the upstairs window. A flash of red hair, Jennifer's signature color, and then ... Eva. My Eva in the window of my listing with my colleague. The rational part of my brain tried to come up with innocent explanations. Maybe Eva had called the main office. Maybe there was some kind of mix-up. Maybe Jennifer was just doing a favor, covering for me. But my heart knew better. Hearts always know. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, watching until they came out together. Jennifer was laughing at something Eva had said, touching her arm. In that casually intimate way she used with men she was trying to charm. Eva was smiling back, that same smile she'd given me in the Magnolia Street Victorian. I'd been played. Completely, thoroughly played. The smart thing would have been to drive away, to lick my wounds in private, to figure out how to salvage my professional reputation from this mess. Instead, I found myself getting out of my car, walking across the street on unsteady legs. "Lessa," Jennifer's voice was bright with false surprise. "What are you doing here?" It's my listing, I said, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be. Oh, of course. Ava mentioned she'd looked at it with you. She turned to Ava with a conspiratorial smile. I was just showing her some comparable properties in the area. You know how it is clients want to see all their options before making a decision. Ava wouldn't meet my eyes. That told me everything I needed to know. I see, I managed. Well, I'll let you finish your got consultation. I made it to my car before the tears started. Made it home before I completely fell apart. She called that night and the next morning, and every day for a week. I deleted her voicemails without listening to them, ignored her texts, threw away the flowers she had delivered to my office. It was Jennifer who finally told me the truth, cornering me in the break room at work with a cup of coffee and a smug expression. I thought you should know, since you seem so attached. Iva Adams isn't actually buying real estate. She's a journalist, writing some expos about unethical practices in the mobile real estate market. The bottom dropped out of my world. What? An investigative piece for the Mobile Bay Register? Something about agents who get too involved with clients. Jennifer's smile was razor sharp. I'm sure it's nothing you need to worry about, though. You've always been so professional. The word felt like a slap. How long have you known? A few weeks. She approached me after she'd already been working on you for a while. Wanted a second perspective or sources. Jennifer shrugged. I told her I'd be happy to help with her research. For the good of the industry, you understand. I understood perfectly. Jennifer had been planning to destroy me from the moment she found out about Eva and Eva ... Eva had been using me the entire time. That night, I drank half a bottle of wine and composed a dozen text messages I didn't send. I wanted to scream at her, to demand explanations, to ask how much of it had been real. The dancing, the late night conversations, the way she'd looked at me when she thought I was sleeping, had any of it meant anything? But in the end, what was the point? The story would come out, my career would be over, and Ava Adams would move on to her next assignment. I'd been a fool to think someone like her could actually want someone like me. The article ran 3 weeks later. The photos were the worst part. Grainy surveillance shots that must have been taken with a telephoto lens, showing me and Ava at the salsa club, holding hands outside a restaurant, kissing in the doorway of her loft building. My private moments turned into evidence of my unprofessional conduct. I was called into my broker's office that afternoon. Lisa, I need to ask you about this article. Richard Hampton was a decent man, had been like a father to me since I'd started at the agency. But he was also running a business, and scandal was bad for business. It's true, I said, because there was no point in lying. I was involved with Eva Adams. I thought she was a legitimate client. He sighed, rubbing his temples. The state licensing board is asking questions. There's going to be an investigation. I understand. I'm going to have to suspend you pending the outcome. I'm sorry, Lisa. You're a good agent, but I can't have this kind of publicity affecting the firm. I cleaned out my desk that same day, 27 years old and watching my career crumble around me. The other agents avoided eye contact, except for Jennifer, who made a point of expressing her support during this difficult time, loud enough for everyone to hear. That night, Eva finally caught up with me. I was sitting in my car in the parking lot of the grocery store, staring at a pint of ice cream I'd bought but couldn't bring myself to eat when she tapped on my window. She looked terrible pale, hollow-eyed, like she hadn't slept in weeks. Good, I thought viciously. She should feel terrible. I rolled down the window but didn't speak. Lisa, please. Let me explain. Explain what? How you used me? How you lied. To me. How you destroyed my career for a story. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Like what? You mean you weren't supposed to get caught? I mean, I wasn't supposed to fall in love with you. The words hit me like a physical blow. Don't. It's true. The story, yes, I was working on a story. But everything else, the way I felt about you, the way you made me feel, that was real. I wanted to believe her. Even then, even after everything, part of me wanted to believe that what we'd had meant something. You destroyed me, I whispered. I tried to kill the story. When I realized what you meant to me, I went to my editor and told him I couldn't write it, that I was too personally involved. But you did write it? She looked stricken. Jennifer. James gave them enough information to write it anyway. With or without me, of course she did. Jennifer, who'd probably been planning this since the day she saw me smile at my phone. So you decided to publish it yourself? Get the byline? I thought if I wrote it, I could control the narrative. Make sure you weren't portrayed as the villain. I tried to make it about systemic issues in the industry, not about you specifically. You used my name, my private moments. You turned our relationship into a cautionary tale. I know, and I hate myself for it. But Lisa, you have to understand. I don't have to understand anything. I started my car needing to get away from her, from this conversation, from the hope that was trying to unfurl in my chest despite everything. Stay away from me, Eva, just ... stay away. I drove off, leaving her standing in that parking lot, and told myself I was done. Done with her, done with love, done with taking risks that could destroy everything I'd worked for. But Eva Adams had never been good at taking no for an answer. The flowers started arriving the next day. Not expensive arrangements from the florist, but single stems, a sunflower, a white rose, a sprig of jasmine left on my doorstep with handwritten notes. I'm sorry. You deserve better. I never meant to hurt you. I threw them away, but not before reading every note. The licensing board hearing was scheduled for 6 weeks after the article ran. 6 weeks of purgatory, of being unemployed. And unemployable, of watching other agents whisper when they saw me at the grocery store or the coffee shop. My mother called daily with updates on the family shame and suggestions for alternative careers. Maybe you could go back to school. Dear, get your teaching certificate. But steady work, respectable. Respectable. As if I'd committed some crime instead of falling in love. My savings dwindled, my confidence cratered. I spent most days in pajamas, alternating between fury and despair, wondering how I'd managed to destroy my life so thoroughly. The hearing itself was a formality. A room full of stern-faced board members, most of whom I'd known professionally for years, listening to Jennifer James's testimony about my unprofessional conduct and ethical violations. Ms. Collins engaged in a personal relationship with an individual she believed to be a client, Jennifer said, her voice professionally neutral. She allowed her personal feelings to compromise her professional judgment, potentially exposing both herself and the firm to liability. My lawyer, a friend of my father's who was doing this as a favor, presented a half-hearted defense about how I'd been deceived, how I'd believed Ava was a legitimate client. But the photos didn't lie. The article didn't lie. I had crossed the line, regardless of the circumstances. The board deliberated for an hour before announcing their decision, a 6-month suspension of my license, professional censure, and mandatory ethics training before reinstatement. It could have been worse, but it felt like the end of the world. I was walking to my car, trying to hold my head up despite the shame burning in my chest, when I saw her. Eva, leaning against the building, across the street, watching. She'd been there the entire time, waiting. This time, I didn't run. I was too exhausted to run, too beaten down to care about maintaining my dignity. What do you want? I asked when she approached. To apologize, to try to make this right. You can't make this right. My career is over. My reputation is destroyed. And for what? A story that nobody even remembers now? Your career isn't over? I laughed bitterly. Right. No firm in Alabama is going to hire me after this. I'm radioactive. So start your own firm. The suggestion was so absurd I actually stared at her. With what money? What clients? What credibility? With me, I blinked. What? I have money, Lisa. Family money, investments. I can back you. And I have connections, people who care more about results than gossip. Why would you do that? Because I love you? Because I ruined your life and I want to fix it? Because you're the most talented agent I've ever met, and it would be a crime to let that talent go to waste because of my mistakes? She reached into her bag and pulled out a thick folder. I've been working on this for weeks. Business plan, financial projections, potential client list. Progressive Realty, a firm that specializes in working with clients who've been underserved by traditional agencies. LGBTQ plus buyers, young professionals, artists, anyone who doesn't fit the conventional mold. I took the folder with shaking hands, flipping through pages of meticulous planning. Market analysis, demographic studies, proposed locations. It was thorough, professional, brilliant. Eva, I can't. You can. You can because you're brilliant and passionate and you care about people, not just commissions. You can because you deserve a chance to build something better than what you had before. And what do you get out of this? Absolution? She was quiet for a long moment. Maybe a chance to prove that I'm not the person who wrote that article. That I'm the person who fell in love with you in that Victorian foyer and has been trying to find her way back to you ever since. I wanted to say no. Wanted to walk away with what little dignity I had left. To start over somewhere else. Somewhere. No one knew my story. But looking at that folder, at the care and detail she'd put into planning a future for me, for us, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. If I do this, I said slowly, it's a business partnership. Nothing more. She nodded, though I saw the flash of pain in her green eyes. Whatever you're comfortable with. And I want complete editorial control over any marketing, any publicity. No articles, no stories, no exposes. Agreed. And Ava, I met her gaze directly. If you ever lie to me again, even about something small, I will destroy you. Personally and professionally. Do you understand? I understand. I closed the folder, decision made. Okay, let's do this. Starting Colin's Progressive Realty was the hardest thing I'd ever done and the most rewarding. We found office space in the Arts District, a converted warehouse with exposed brick walls that reminded me of Ava's loft, of that first kiss that had started everything. Eva handled the business side while I focused on building our client base, reaching out to people who'd been overlooked or poorly served by traditional real estate firms. Our first client was Marcus Chen, a young gay man, who'd been trying to buy his first home for 8 months, but kept running into agents who were either openly hostile or patronizingly dismissive. I spent 3 weeks with him, looking at properties, explaining the process, helping him understand his options. When he finally closed on a beautiful craftsman cottage in Midtown, he sent me a card that said simply, "Thank you for treating me like a human being." That's when I knew we were doing something right. Word spread through networks I'd never had access to before. The local LGBTQ plus center started referring clients to us. Young professionals recommended us to friends, artists, and musicians who'd been priced out of traditional neighborhoods, found homes in up-and-coming areas we specialized in. Eva proved to be a brilliant business partner. She had an eye for marketing that I lacked, a way of connecting with people that drew clients in. She also had the financial backing to weather the slow months while we built our reputation. Working with her was complicated. The attraction was still there. I'd catch her watching me during client meetings, or she'd brush against me reaching for files, and I'd feel that familiar spark. But I kept my walls up, maintained professional distance. I'd been burned once. I wasn't going to let it happen again. She never pushed, never tried to leverage our history for personal gain. When we worked late and ordered takeout, she kept the conversation focused on business. When we celebrated our first big sale, she congratulated me with a handshake instead of the hug I could see her wanting to give. It was torture, and it was exactly what I needed. 6 months in, we were profitable. A year in, we'd moved to larger offices and hired 2 associate agents. 18 months in, we were the talk of the mobile real estate community, not for scandal this time, but for innovation. Traditional agencies started poaching our ideas. Diversity and inclusion became buzzwords in marketing materials across the city. Jennifer James, who'd started her own firm after leaving Premium Properties, began advertising herself as LGBTQ plus friendly, a development that made me laugh until my sides hurt. Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, Ava said when I showed her Jennifer's new website. We were having our monthly business review meeting, sitting across from each other at the conference table in my office. The late afternoon sun was streaming through the windows, and Eva looked beautiful and professional in her navy blazer, hair pulled back in a sleek bun. I prefer being ahead of the curve to being flattered, I said, making notes on our quarterly. Projections, we're doing well, Lisa, really well. We are? She was quiet for a moment, then, do you ever think about what comes next? I looked up from my notes. Expansion? I've been thinking about opening a second office in Birmingham. That's not what I meant. The air in the room shifted, became charged with possibility and danger. I knew that tone, knew the look in her eyes. Eva ... It's been 2 years, Lisa. 2 years of working together, of building something incredible together. Don't you think we've proven that we can trust each other? That we make a good team? We make a good business team? We made a good everything team before I screwed it up. I set down my pen, choosing my words carefully. What we had before was built on a lie. The business, is built on honesty and mutual respect. So build something new, something better. She reached across the table, her fingers brushing mine. I should have pulled away, should have maintained my professional boundaries. Instead, I found myself turning my hand palm up, letting her link our fingers together. I'm terrified, I whispered. Of what? Of you. Of this. Of letting myself want something I can't control. Her thumb stroked across my knuckles, gentle and reassuring. You don't have to control everything, Lisa. Sometimes the best things happen when you let go. The last time I let go with you, it destroyed my life. And look what you built from the ruins. Look what we built. I looked around my office, our office at the awards on the walls. The photos of happy clients, the business cards that read Collins Progressive Realty, where everyone belongs. We had built something beautiful, something meaningful. If we do this, I said slowly, if we try again, it has to be different this time. No secrets, no agendas. Complete honesty. Complete honesty, she agreed. And we take it slow, really slow. She smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from her in months. As slow as you want. Our second first date was at the same salsa club where she'd taken me 2 years earlier. But this time, instead of awkward fumbling, I knew the steps. Instead of nervous energy, there was anticipation. She wore the same leather jacket from that first day in my open house, and when she spun me on the dance floor, I felt like I was coming home. I missed this, she murmured in my ear as we swayed together. Dancing? You, this, us. I pulled back to look at her, seeing vulnerability I'd never noticed before. Eva had always seemed so confident, so sure of herself. But now I could see the uncertainty in her eyes, the fear that I might change my mind, might decide this was too risky. I missed it too, I admitted. We took it slow, like I'd insisted. Coffee dates and lunch meetings that ran long. Professional dinners that turned personal. Stolen kisses in the office after hours, her hands tangling in my hair while I forgot every reason why this was complicated. But it was different this time, better. We talked about everything, her childhood in New Orleans, her decision to become a journalist, the guilt she'd carried about the article. I told her about my fears, my need for control, the way loving her had terrified me because it made me feel so vulnerable. I used to think vulnerability was weakness, I said one evening. As we walked along the Mobile River, fingers intertwined. My mother raised me to believe that showing emotion, needing someone, was dangerous. And now I think vulnerability is the only way to really connect with another person. It's terrifying, but worth it. She stopped walking, turned to face me. Lisa Collins, are you saying you need me? The question was light, teasing, but I could see the serious hope underneath. I'm saying I choose you. Every day I choose you. Not because I need you to complete me or save me or fix my life, but because loving you makes me braver, more myself. She kissed me then, right there on the riverbank with the sunset painting the sky pink and gold, and it felt like a promise. 3 months later, she moved in with me. Not into my sterile apartment with its beige walls and carefully coordinated furniture, but into a house we bought together. A Victorian cottage in the historic district, with original hardwood floors and stained glass windows and enough character for both of us. It needs work, I said as we walked through it for the first time, already mentally calculating renovation costs. It needs love, Ava corrected, trailing her fingers along the original crown molding. Same thing, really. We spent weekends stripping wallpaper and refinishing floors, arguing about paint colors and cabinet, hardware with the passionate intensity of people who cared deeply about creating something beautiful together. Ava had strong opinions about everything from doorknobs to light fixtures, and I discovered I liked having someone to debate domestic decisions with. The business continued to grow. We hired more agents, expanded our services, opened that second office in Birmingham. I spoke at real estate conferences about inclusive marketing and ethical practices. Eva started a blog about urban development and gentrification that gained national attention. We were featured in Alabama Business Monthly as entrepreneurs to watch, and the photos showed us standing in front of our offices, looking professional and successful and completely legitimate. No scandal, no whispers, just two businesswomen who happened to be building something important together. Look up, Eva said, holding up the magazine, respectable. I laughed, remembering my mother's constant worry about respectability. My mother finally stopped asking when I'm going to find a nice man and settle down. What does she ask now? When we're going to give her grandchildren. Ava's face went carefully neutral. We talked about the future in broad strokes expanding. The business, maybe buying a beach house, growing old together. But we'd never discussed the specifics of marriage or children or the kind of conventional milestones my mother valued. Is that something you want? I asked carefully. Kids, with you. Everything. I want everything with you. The conversation led to others. Late night talks about adoption versus fertility treatments, about how to balance career ambitions. With family life, about whether we wanted a big wedding or something small and intimate. I never thought I'd want to get married, Ava admitted one night as we lay in bed. Her head on my chest, my fingers playing with her hair. It seemed so heteronormative, so traditional. And now I want everyone to know you're mine. I want legal recognition, shared health insurance, joint tax returns. I want to be your next of kin and your emergency contact and the person who gets to make decisions if something happens to you. How romantic, I teased, but my heart was racing. I want to wear your ring and have you wear mine. I want to call you my wife and have you call me yours. Ava dot dot. She lifted her head to look at me, green eyes serious in the dim light filtering through our bedroom windows. I know it's soon. I know we're still figuring things out. But Lisa, I've never been more sure of anything in my life. It's not soon, I said, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. We've been building toward this for 3 years. Since that first day in the Victorian when you asked if I had character. Do you have character? I smiled, remembering how that question had flustered me, how vulnerable it had made me feel. You tell me, you have more character than anyone I've ever known. You're brave and principled and kind, and you make me want to be better than I am. You are better than you were. We both are. She shifted, propping herself up on her elbow. So is that a yes? That depends. Are you asking? I'm asking. It wasn't the proposal either of us had probably imagined. No grand gestures, no ring, no bended knee. Just two women in their shared bed, surrounded by the life they'd built together, choosing each other again. Yes, I whispered. Always yes. Planning a wedding while running a business and maintaining some semblance of work-life balance turned out to be nearly impossible. Eva wanted something big and celebration-worthy. She'd waited 32 years to find the person she wanted to marry, and she wanted to shout it from the rooftops. I preferred something smaller, more intimate, just our closest friends and family. We compromised as we'd learned to do about everything. A ceremony in the garden behind our house for 50 people, followed by a reception at the Grand Hotel, elegant but not ostentatious, meaningful but not overwhelming. The hardest part was the guest list. Ava's family bohemian artists and writers from New Orleans would blend beautifully with our chosen family of friends and colleagues. But my family was more complicated. My parents had struggled with my relationship with Eva, not because they were homophobic exactly, but because they couldn't understand how I'd thrown away everything they'd raised me to value for someone who'd initially deceived me. They'd come around eventually, especially after seeing how successful the business had become, but there was still tension. You don't have to invite them, Eva said when she found me staring at the half-finished guest list, pen frozen in my hand. It's our day. We only include people who love and support us. They do love me. They just worry. About what? About me making another mistake. About you breaking my heart again. About what people will think. Eva was quiet for a moment, then gently took the pen from my hand. What do you think? I think I'm tired of living my life based on other people's fears. I think I want them there because they're my parents, but I also want them to understand that you're my choice. Permanently, irrevocably my choice. Then invite them. And if they can't handle seeing how happy we are together, that's their problem, not ours. The morning of our wedding dawned clear and warm, one of those perfect April days when spring in Alabama feels like a gift. I woke up in our guest room. Eva had insisted we spend the night apart for tradition's sake, too. Sunlight streaming through the windows and the sound of vendors setting up in our garden. My hands were shaking as I got dressed, not from nerves about marrying Ava, but from the sheer enormity of the moment. 2 years ago, I thought my life was over. Today, I was starting a new chapter with the woman I loved, surrounded by people who'd watched us build something beautiful from the wreckage of our mistakes. My mother knocked on the door just as I was struggling with the buttons on my dress vintage-inspired ivory silk that we'd found at a boutique in New Orleans during one of our weekend trips to visit Ava's family. Let me help, she said, stepping behind me to work the tiny pearl buttons. We were both quiet as she fastened them, her fingers gentle and familiar. When she finished, she rested her hands on my shoulders, meeting my eyes in the mirror. You look beautiful, sweetheart. Thank you. Are you happy? The question was loaded with years of worry and disappointment, with her fears that I was making choices that would hurt me. I'm so happy, Mom. Happier than I've ever been. She nodded, and I saw tears in her eyes. Then that's all that matters. The ceremony was perfect. Eva walked down the aisle to music played by a string quartet, wearing a flowing emerald dress. That brought out her eyes and made her look like some kind of fairy tale princess. When she reached me, standing under the arch of white roses and jasmine we'd installed that morning, she was crying. You're supposed to wait until the vows for. Tears, I whispered. Too late, she whispered back. You're so beautiful, I can't help myself. Our officiant was Pastor Michelle from the Progressive Methodist Church. Eva had started attending with me, a compromise that had surprised us both. I'd grown up Methodist but stopped attending regularly years ago. Eva had been raised Catholic, but left the church in college. But Pastor Michelle's message of love and inclusion had drawn us both back to faith, or at least to community. Marriage, she said, addressing our gathered friends and family, is not just about love, though Lisa and Eva certainly have that in abundance. It's about choice. The choice to build a life together, to support each other's dreams, to weather storms as a team. She talked about commitment, about forgiveness, about the courage it takes to be vulnerable with another person. She talked about the specific challenges faced by same-sex couples, the extra intention required to create families and futures in a world that doesn't always recognize or support them. But love is always a radical act, she concluded. Love always requires courage. And looking at Lisa and Eva, at what they've built together, both personally and professionally, I see two people who understand that love isn't just a feeling, it's a practice. We'd written our own vows, of course. Eva went first, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. Lisa, when I met you, I was looking for a story. What I found was home. You've taught me that integrity isn't about being perfect. It's about owning your mistakes and doing better. You've shown me what it means to love someone, not despite their flaws, but because of their whole complicated, beautiful self. I promise to choose you every day, to build dreams with you, to love you through whatever storms come our way. I promise to be the partner you deserve, the woman you fell in love with, and the person I'm still becoming because of you. Then it was my turn. I'd rehearsed these words a dozen times, but standing there looking at Eva, at her tear-streaked face and radiant smile, at the woman who turned my carefully planned life upside down and helped me build something better. From the pieces, every practice phrase flew out of my head. Eva, I began, my voice shaking, you asked me once if I had character. The truth is, I didn't really know who I was until I met you. You saw something in me I couldn't see in myself, someone brave enough to take risks, strong enough to rebuild from failure, capable of love that transforms everything. You've been my partner in every sense of the word, in business and in life, in dreams realized and mistakes forgiven. I promise to love you not just in the easy moments, but in the hard ones. I promise to trust you with my heart, even when it scares me. I promise to build whatever future we can imagine together, and to choose you, always you, every single day. When Pastor Michelle pronounced us wives, when Ava kissed me with sunlight filtering through the trees and our friends cheering around us, I felt like I was finally exactly where I was supposed to be. The reception was a blur of dancing and laughter, of toasts from friends who told stories about our early days, when we were clearly crazy about each other but too stubborn to admit it. My father surprised me by asking Ava to dance and watching them sway together to old Motown while he told her embarrassing stories about my childhood made my heart swell with gratitude. But the moment that will stay with me forever happened late in the evening, when most of our guests had gone home and we were slow dancing in our garden under string lights. still in our wedding clothes, exhausted and exhilarated. How does it feel? Eva asked, her arms around my neck, swaying to music drifting from inside the house where a few stragglers were still celebrating. How does what feel? Being Mrs. Adams Collins. We decided to hyphenate, both of us taking both names. It had seemed important to create something new together rather than one of us disappearing into the other's identity. It feels like coming home, I said. It feels like the beginning of everything. Good, she murmured against my ear, because I have plans for us. What kind of plans? Instead of answering, she pulled away and reached into the small purse she'd carried down the aisle. From it, she withdrew a small velvet box. Ava, we already did rings. Not that kind of box, she said, grinning as she opened it. Inside wasn't jewelry, but a key. Antique brass, ornate and beautiful. What is this? Remember the loft where you first kissed me? Where everything started? Of course I remembered. The industrial space downtown with the exposed brick and soaring ceilings, where Eva had said she didn't care about the floors and kissed me until I forgot my own name. The owner decided to sell. I bought it. I stared at her. You bought the loft for us. As a wedding present, as an investment, as a reminder of where this all began. I thought maybe we could turn it into something special. An office for the Birmingham expansion, maybe, or an event space, or just somewhere that's ours. Ava ... I know we have the house, and I love our house, but this place. This is where Lisa Collins decided to be brave. Where she kissed a client and changed both of their lives forever. I thought maybe we should honor that. I took the key from the box, feeling its weight in my palm. When did you do this? I've been working on it for months. The paperwork went through yesterday. You've been planning this since before we got engaged. I've been planning this since the day I realized I wanted to spend my life with you. I looked at my wife, standing in our garden in her emerald dress with string lights reflected in her green eyes, and felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of love I felt for her. I love you, I said, because it was the only thing big. Enough for the moment. I love you too. So, want to go check out our new property? Now. It's almost midnight. Best time to see how the light falls. We drove downtown, still in our wedding clothes, Ava's veil trailing from the passenger seat of my car, both of us giddy with champagne and happiness and the surreal reality that we were married, that we'd done this impossible thing. The loft was exactly as I remembered, soaring ceilings, exposed brick, huge windows that would flood the space with light during the day. But now it was empty of the staged furniture that had been there when Ava first kissed me. Just open space full of possibility. What do you think? Eva asked, watching me walk through the main room. I think, I said slowly, that this is where Collins Adams Progressive Realty should have its flagship office. Collins Adams? We're partners now, in everything. She crossed to where I was standing by the windows, slipped her arms around me from behind. Partners, she agreed, pressing a kiss to my temple. Looking out at the city lights, at Mobile spread out below us, like a constellation of possibilities, I thought about the journey that had brought us here. The mistakes and misunderstandings, the professional ruin and personal heartbreak, the slow rebuilding of trust and the careful construction of something better than either of us had imagined possible. Do you ever regret it? I asked the article. The way we met? Ava was quiet for a long moment, her chin resting on my shoulder. I regret hurting you. I regret the deception and the pain I caused, but regret meeting you? Regret falling in love with you? Never, even if I'd known how complicated it would get, even if I'd known it would turn my whole life upside down. I would have walked into that open house and asked you if you had character, and if I'd said no, then I would have spent however long it took convincing you that you did. I turned in her arms, looking at this woman who'd seen something in me I hadn't seen in myself, who challenged me to be braver than I thought I could be. I have a confession, I said. Oh, no, what now? I knew. Knew what? That you weren't really looking for real estate? Maybe not consciously at first, but somewhere deep down I knew. No one looks at that many properties without making an offer unless they're looking for something else entirely. Eva stared at me. You knew I wasn't a real client? I suspected. But I didn't care because I was looking for something too. I just didn't know it until I found you. What were you looking for? Someone who would ask me if I had character. Someone who would make me want to find out. She kissed me then, soft and sweet and full of promise, there in the empty loft where our story had really begun. And I thought about all the stories we still had to write together, in business and in marriage, in the space we'd build and the life we'd share. So Eva said when we broke apart, ready for the next chapter, I looked around the loft at the exposed brick walls and soaring ceilings, at the space we'd fill with dreams and plans and the daily reality of building something meaningful together. I thought about our house with its Victorian charm and ongoing renovations, about our business with its growing success and expanding mission, about the future we'd create one choice, one day, one brave moment at a time. With you? I said, taking. Her hand, our wedding rings catching the light from the street lamps below. I'm ready for everything. And for the first time in my carefully planned, thoroughly analyzed, completely transformed life, I meant it. We walked out of that loft hand in hand, Mrs. and Mrs. Adams Collins, ready to build whatever came next together. The key was in my purse, the possibilities were endless, and the woman I loved was by my side. Sometimes the best stories are the ones that begin with falling apart. Sometimes you have to lose everything you thought you wanted to find everything you actually need. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, the person who turns your world upside down is the same person who helps you build it back up, better and stronger and more beautiful than before. This is our story, Ava's and mine, and we're still writing. It one property at a time, one day at a time, one choice to love each other at a time. It began with a question about character, and it continues with the daily practice of choosing to be the kind of people worthy of the love we found together. The end? No, I don't think so. This feels much more like a beginning,